In this video, we'll study about the ulna. Ulna is the medial bone of the forearm and it represents the post-axial bone which corresponds with the fibula of the lower limb. The ulna consists of upper end. So this is the upper end or the proximal end, and this is the lower end or the distal end, and this is the shaft or the body of the ulna. Now we'll see about the upper end. The upper end presents a hook-like massive bone with the concavity directed in front. The upper end consists of olecranon and the coronoid processes and two articular area. One is the trochlear notch, the other one is the radial notch. The olecranon process projects upward and possesses a beak-like summit which occupies the olecranon fossa of the humerus in extended elbow. It presents 5 surfaces. So this is the upper surface, and this is the lateral surface, and this is the medial surface, and this is the anterior surface, and this is the posterior surface. The upper surface is rough. So this is the upper surface. It is rough and it gives attachment from before backwards to the capsular ligament of the elbow joint and to the insertion of the triceps brachiae with the bursa intervening between them. The posterior end of the upper surface forms the point of the elbow which lies in a horizontal line joining the medial and the lateral epicondyle of the humerus in an extended elbow. But during flexion, the line joining these 3 bony points form a isosceles triangle. Here you can see the posterior end of the upper surface. It forms a point which lies in a horizontal line joining the medial and the lateral epicondyle of the humerus in extended elbow. Here you can see in a flexed elbow the lines joining the medial epicondyle, the lateral epicondyle and the posterior end of the upper surface of the olecranon process. They form a isosceles triangle. Next we'll see about the medial surface of the olecranon process. This surface is continuous with the corresponding surface of the coronoid process and the shaft of the ulna. The medial surface of the olecranon process gives attachment to the structures from before backwards, the fibrous capsule of the elbow joint, then the posterior and oblique bands of the ulnar collateral ligament, and a slip of origin of flexor carpi ulnaris muscle and the highest origin of the flexor digitorum profundus. Next we'll see about the lateral surface of the olecranon process. It is continuous with the posterior surface of the shaft of the ulna. The lateral surface of the olecranon process gives attachment from before backwards. You get the fibrous capsule of the elbow joint, then you have the radial collateral ligament, and then you have the insertion of the anconeus muscle. Next we'll see about the posterior border. The posterior border is smooth and triangular and subcutaneous. From the apex of the triangle, the posterior border of the shaft extends downward. Sometimes between the skin and the bone, a bursa intervenes. Next we'll see about the anterior surface of the olecranon process. The anterior surface is articular and it forms the upper part of the trochlear notch to fit with the trochlea of the humerus. The articular surface is divided into 3 parts by vertical line. This is the medial part and this is the intermediate part. So this medial and the intermediate part come in contact respectively with the medial and the lateral phalanges of the trochlea in most of the movements of the elbow. Then you have a narrow lateral part. The narrow lateral part, it makes contact with the trochlea only in extension. Next we'll see about the coronite process. The coronite process forms a bracket-like forward projection below the trochlear notch. Its upper surface is articular and forms the lower part of the trochlear notch, and the trochlear notch, the upper surface is subdivided by a ridge into medial and the lateral part to accommodate the respective phalanges of the trochlea. The sharp anterior margin, so this is a sharp anterior margin. So this sharp anterior margin of the upper surface, it comes in contact with the coronite fossa of the humerus in flexed elbow. Next we'll see about the anterior surface of the coronite process. It is rough and triangular with an elevation that is known as the ulnar tuberosity in the lower part. The entire anterior surface of the coronite process, it receives the insertion of the brachialis muscle. The lower end of the ulnar tuberosity is connected with the corresponding part of the radial tuberosity by the oblique cord, which slopes downwards and laterally and represents the degenerated remnant of flexor pollicis longus. So here you can see the anterior surface of the coronite process. It receives the insertion of the brachialis muscle, and then the lower end of the ulnar tuberosity gives attachment to the oblique cord. The medial margin of the anterior surface is sharp and it presents a tubercle that is called as the sublime tubercle in the upper part. From above downwards, the medial margin gives origin to a part of flexor digitorum superficialis, the ulnar head of the pronata teres, and occasional head of the flexor pollicis longus muscle. Here you can see the medial margin of the anterior surface of the coronite process. It gives attachment from above downwards a part of the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle and the ulnar head of the pronata teres muscle. Sometimes you get an occasional head of flexor pollicis longus muscle. Next we'll see about the lateral surface of the coronite process. It presents adjacent to the trochlear notch. You have the radial notch. So this is the radial notch which articulates with the medial part of the peripheral margin of the head of the radius. The rest of the surface below the notch presents a triangular depression which is limited behind by a raised margin that is called as the supinator crest. The depressed area, it forms the room for the movements of the radial tuberosity during supination and pronation. Next we'll see about the trochlear notch. The trochlear notch is contributed by the anterior surface of the olecranon process and the upper surface of the coronite process, and it articulates with the trochlea of the humerus to form the humero-ulnar part of the elbow joint. The notch is constricted at the junction between the two processes and it forms a non-articular strip. The peripheral margin of the notch gives attachment to the capsular ligament of the elbow joint. Laterally, the trochlear notch becomes continuous with the radial notch. So this is the radial notch, which articulates with the medial part of the peripheral margin of the head of the radius to form the superior radio-ulnar joint. The anterior and the posterior ends of the radial notch gives attachment to the annular ligament which embraces the rest of the peripheral margin. The radial head rotates around a vertical axis within the osseo-ligamentous ring. Here you can see the radial notch articulates with the medial part of the peripheral margin of the head of the radius to form the superior radio-ulnar joint. The anterior and the posterior ends of the radial notch gives attachment to the annular ligament. Next we'll see the shaft of the ulna. It diminishes progressively from above downward except at the lower end. The shaft presents a double curve. It is gently convex dorsally throughout the entire extent. From side to side, it describes a medial concavity in the upper part and lateral concavity in the lower part. The shaft is triangular on cross section in the proximal 3/4 and cylindrical in the distal 1/4. The shaft presents three borders: an interosseous border which lies laterally, then you have anterior border and posterior border. So three borders: interosseous border, anterior border and posterior border. The shaft presents three surfaces. You have the anterior surface, then you have the posterior surface, and then you have the medial surface. So three surfaces: anterior surface, posterior surface and medial surface. Next we'll see about the anterior border. The anterior border is rounded and ill-defined, and it extends from the lower end of the ulnar tuberosity to the front of the ulnar styloid process. Next we'll see about the posterior border. The posterior border is entirely subcutaneous and it is sinuously curved, and it extends from the apex of the subcutaneous posterior surface of the olecranon process to the back of the styloid process. The posterior border gives attachment to the deep fascia of the forearm, and through the deep fascia it provides origin to the flexor digitorum profundus muscle in the proximal 3/4 and flexor carpi ulnaris in the proximal half, extensor carpi ulnaris in the middle 1/3. Through the attachment of the deep fascia of the forearm, the posterior border gives origin to the flexor digitorum profundus in the proximal 3/4 and flexor carpi ulnaris in the proximal half and extensor carpi ulnaris in the middle 1/3. Next we'll see about the interosseous border or lateral border. It presents a ridge except in the lower part. When traced above, it is continuous with the supinator crest. The border gives attachment to the interosseous membrane, which presents a gap between the upper free border of the membrane and the oblique cord, and the gap gives passage to the posterior interosseous vessels. Here you can see the interosseous border giving attachment to the interosseous membrane, and the gap between the upper border of the interosseous membrane and the oblique cord gives passage to the posterior interosseous vessels. Next we'll see about the anterior surface. It intervenes between the interosseous and the anterior border of the ulna. It is continuous with the medial surface in the interval between the anterior and the posterior borders. The upper 3/4 of the anterior and the medial surface, along with the medial surface of the olecranon and the coronoid process, it provides origin to the flexor digitorum profundus muscle. The lower 1/4 of the anterior surface gives origin to the pronator quadratus muscle. So here you can see the upper 3/4 of the anterior and the medial surface, along with the medial surface of the olecranon and the coronoid process, it gives origin to the flexor digitorum profundus muscle. And then the lower 1/4 of the anterior surface gives origin to the pronator quadratus muscle. Next we'll see about the posterior surface. The posterior surface intervenes between the posterior border and the interosseous border. An oblique ridge extending from the junction of the upper 1/4 and the lower 3/4 of the posterior border to the posterior lip of the radial notch of the ulna divides the posterior surface into an upper area and a lower area. The upper area, together with the lateral surface of the olecranon process, it receives the insertion of the anconeus muscle. The lower large area is subdivided by a vertical ridge into a lateral narrow part and a medial broad part. The lateral part provides origin from above downwards to the abductor pollicis longus muscle, extensor pollicis longus muscle and extensor indicis muscle. The lower medial part of the posterior surface is overlapped by the extensor carpi ulnaris muscle. Here you can see the upper area together with the lateral surface of the olecranon process. It receives the insertion of the anconeus muscle. The lower area on the lateral aspect, it gives origin to the abductor pollicis longus muscle, extensor pollicis longus muscle and extensor indicis muscle. The large medial area of the lower part of the posterior surface, it is overlapped by the extensor carpi ulnaris muscle. Next we'll see about the lower end of the ulna. It is somewhat expanded and presents the head of the ulna and the styloid process. The styloid process extends downward from the posteromedial aspect of the head. When you see the head of the ulna, it is rounded and articular. Its lateral surface fits into the ulnar notch of the radius and forms the inferior radio-ulnar joint. The lower surface of the head comes in contact with the articular disc of the inferior radio-ulnar joint, thus preventing the head of the ulna forming the wrist joint. The apex of the articular disc is attached to the depression between the undersurface of the head of the ulna and its styloid process. So here you can see the head of the ulna articulating with the ulnar notch of the radius forming the inferior radio-ulnar joint, and the lower surface of the head comes in contact with the articular disc of the inferior radio-ulnar joint, thus preventing the head of the ulna forming the wrist joint. The apex of the disc is attached to the depression between the undersurface of the ulnar head and its styloid process. A groove between the styloid process and the posterior surface of the head of the ulna lodges the tendon of extensor carpi ulnaris muscle. The styloid process gives attachment to the ulnar collateral ligament of the wrist joint. The radial styloid process lies 2 cm below the ulnar styloid process. So how to determine the side of the ulna? Place the olecranon process above, the trochlear notch in front and the sharp intraosseous border laterally. So this determines the side of the bone. So this is a right side ulna.